Chapter 11. Stalin dies. The only moderating force on China has just died.
Bad news for everyone.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is actually a horrific point for Chinese people.
Yeah.
It's also a moment in which Mao decides it's time to purge everyone that Stalin liked within the party. Because they're
right, yeah. No,
Stalinists.
Makes sense, yeah.
Unlike him, who's a super Stalinist. If you're not super Stalinist like him,
Mm-hmm.
you're a bad guy. There's a funny point in here. There's actually, just to note, Mao laid a wreath for Stalin, days of mourning, etc. Mao was a loyal student of Stalin, more a Stalinist than Stalin himself.
Evidently.
He had to be reined in multiple times by Stalin, as mentioned. Mao also had quite a lot of grievances against Stalin because of this stuff.
Yeah.
He thought he was being a cuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, Mao was loyal till the very end. Even towards the very end, he would write off messages to Stalin asking for advice on even the most minor of matters about collectivization, for example.
How many more people can I kill?
But Stalin would get these very petty letters on very petty matters constantly from Mao and had to respond, obviously.
Yeah.
But you must have through from Stalin's perspective. It's like, what the fuck?
Can't you make this decision on your own?
Apparently not. But without Stalin to rein him in, Mao could now do as he pleased. Finally, Mao insisted that socialism must be achieved, because it hadn't yet.
Oh, of course it hasn't yet.
Nationalised every single inch of Chinese industry, as Jess Phillips wants to.
Yep.
Compensation for the remaining factories.
Remaining factories, yeah.
The average compensation for a factory? What do you think it was?
Was it a bullet?
No, it was better than that. It was a packet of cigarettes.
Okay, well, at least you're not just shot.
Yeah. The factory owners were basically rounded up to insist that they wanted this. There was a meeting in which the local party calls them all in and says, we're having a meeting, and you're going to tell Mao himself how you feel about this? Mao turns up and asks them, some people say we should slow down with the nationalisation. What do you folks think? Without a drop, every single one of them, fearing for their lives,
Obviously.
says, we actually want more socialisation. We love it, Mao. In fact, I'm willing to give you my factory right now.
Yeah.
Hands over a contract for like a penny.
Yeah.
It's the lesson Mao gets from that. Chapter 12. Note on the gulags. The population hovered around 2 million people at any given time.
Amazing that they've been bothered with gulags, to be honest.
Yeah. This is actually a higher percentage of the population than the US incarcerates right now. You'll endlessly have this common propaganda. They're like, mass incarceration in the US is terrible.
Yeah.
Look how many people in prison. And you look at why they're in prison.
For crimes.
Yeah, violent crimes.
Yeah.
It's not an ounce of weed. That's a complete myth.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
In the gulags, however, 9 out of 10, as the party records show, were political prisoners.
Shock and surprise.
Mao decided that 300,000 of them should be killed. This is just one day he wakes up and he's like, yeah, just kill 300,000.
Where did he pull this number from?
Nowhere.
Right.
Just picks it. And the others should be made to work in hostile environments in the country. This isn't where they're called microaggressions. This is the wastelands of China where you are certain to die.
Yeah.
So all of them should be killed, is essentially that dictate. A powerful inspectorate, set up by the party itself, examined thousands of cases and concluded only 90% of the cases were correct. Correct, according to the standards that political prisoners are correctly imprisoned. So, according to the party itself, 10% of the people in there are not in there for anything. They haven't even been anti-communist, not even urged a thought, not even in the wrong class. They're just rando people.
I mean, I guess better than being killed marginally.
Well, they will be killed.
I mean,
It's
previously
coming.
being killed.
Yeah. Well, not really. I'd rather be killed on the outset, frankly.
Yeah.
According to their own party, 200,000 people were in there for no crime, even according to communist standards. Many of them would freeze to death or die of dysentery, etc. It's a gulag. They are hell on earth. They're as bad as the concentration camps in Germany. In fact, some of them are much worse.
Yep.
They're not death camps yet. The only success story from all of that wasteland exploitation of human scum was actually in Xinjiang. This is an incredible success story. For colonization, of course, the foundation of one of the most successful programs of colonization in modern history
Go on.
is what Frank Dikötter calls it. It is the fact that hundreds of thousands of human scum and also lots of veterans who now didn't have a job, so it was a way of getting rid of them, were sent to Xinjiang. When they turned up, there was no buildings in most of the areas they went. They had to dig in the ground to form a trench. That's where they were sleeping tonight. That was their house. Nice. There's no plugged-in water.
Obviously.
Never mind electricity.
Yeah.
In fact, there's very little water at all.
Yeah.
Hell on earth. But in Xinjiang, it was the only place in which a success story was formed. in which everyone survived. They didn't all die. And on that basis, we have the Chinese colonization of Xinjiang, the eradication of the locals to this day. The only reason it's happening there, in that case, because they succeeded. Chapter 13. The regime itself was keen to compare itself to its predecessors. They wanted to know. In fact, they wanted to prove it in black and white, blocko text, in leftist style, that the Communist Party had bring about better material conditions than anyone before them.
Right, yeah, okay.
It was a really stupid move to do it at this moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, what numbers are they going to be pulling up?
I don't know what they were expecting. They enrolled statisticians from all over the country to come up with detailed inflation-adjusted studies that went back to 1937. Most of them were never published, and for good reason.
I can only imagine why.
They showed that in many cases, probably most, life was actually better 2 decades earlier than under the Communist Party. Grain, pork, oil, and cloth consumption had fallen, never mind living space, pollution standards, transport costs, etc. Pretty much every metric Frank Dikötter gives you. And he gives you, like, tables from the archives that the statisticians made in the 1950s and were published.
I'm amazed they didn't just falsify the information.
They wanted an accurate result.
Right, okay.
Once they got that, they just didn't want it going any further with the Central Party.
It's mental. It's like, literally like if Satan took over a country.
Yeah. Statisticians' tables actually showed how people were even worse off than the 1948 Civil War.
Well, it sounds like it, yeah.
So after Japanese occupation, the rape of Nanking, blah, 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 and then the nationalists take it back, all that fighting, and then the communists come along and kill everyone again, people were still better off than they were now at this point in communist rule, in which we're told it's a golden age. He gives an example, a specific one I'm going to go through. Haku Battery Factory lists since 1937, has a number of things. 1948, very similar numbers, so I won't list those. But in 1937, compared to now, under Mao, 20% drop in annual grain consumption, 60% drop in pork consumption, 40% drop in edible oils, a 50% drop in clothing per year, and a 25% drop in housing per square meter. I feel so liberated. Anyone with a disability had no way...
it sounds like real communism to me.
Anyone with a disability had no way of fitting in to this new state. The new state was essentially that you take orders and earn work points, literal good boy points, from the party. So you get your food. Yeah, so anyone disabled, just kill yourself. You have no future.
Well, they're going to kill you, so, you know.
You will starve to death soon enough, is actually what will happen. Lepers were the worst off in this new China.
Lepers?
Yeah.
Well, I bet they were.
They were burnt alive en masse. There's one instance where they round up a whole bunch of them and literally burn them on a pyre like medieval peasants.
They didn't used to burn medieval peasants on pyres en masse.
They did in China in 1955. You think, what's happening in America right now? You know, Golden Age, LA Noire, we're going to solve the crime, Detective Phelps. And in China, they're like, burn him.
Like, the only time I can think of this happening is in the Cathar heresy, where a bunch of them were burned at the stake, actually. But it's very, very unusual and was considered very brutal.
It's kind of messed up to burn a human being alive.
Yeah.
But he's a leper, so, yeah, what are you going to do? Chapter 14. Sorry, I missed a bit there. Don't want to miss that. Fundamentally, humans were just digits on resource sheets, not to be something treated with any respect.
We call this a managerial revolution.
Yeah, what could go wrong with that? Chapter 14. The 1956 secret speech is given. People who do not know, Khrushchev rounded everyone up after Stalin's death for a secret meeting. He just listed off how Stalin was terrible.
And everyone was quiet.
Everyone in the room was a party member, a hardline communist who had spent years defending Stalin. No one jeered, no one said anything at all. The occasional gasp was heard from the crowd, and then everyone got up in complete silence and left and went home to their house and sat in silence. Maybe argued. Once it was released to the public, quite a lot of them killed themselves. In Khrushchev's speech, Khrushchev denounced the regime of suspicion, fear, and terror created by Stalin. Khrushchev further assailed Stalin for his mania of greatness and the cult of personality he had fostered during his regime. Khrushchev promised to return power to the Politburo instead of a single man in the party. This speech was then sent to China. It was published. Every member of the party heard it. Oh boy. Mao shat himself.
Well, he's like, well, Christ, if that's what Stalin did, look at my piles of skulls.
Every communist in China heard that what Stalin had done was really bad, but also knew that Mao was going further than Stalin. And
I'm a
was actually
super
proud of it.
Stalinist.
Yeah. At the 8th Party Congress in 1956, a reference to Mao Zedong thought was removed from the party's charter. Elites openly spoke in favour of the principles of collective leadership, basically like, you shouldn't have any power, you're a lunatic, so instead we should be in charge. Khrushchev also accused Stalin of ruining agriculture in the 1930s. Remember what's going on right now in China?
Yeah.
Even though he never went anywhere, never met with workers and collective farmers. This too must have been too close to the bone for the chairman, who viewed the country from the comfort of his private train. The socialist high tide, farm collectivization, was immediately scrapped by the 8th Party Congress. This is a beautiful moment when you think reform might come. You know, Mao is literally being taken down from the inside. Another chance in which we could have corrected history for people who don't want to become slaves and die. It's a small minority, I know.
Yep.
In Poland, workers took to the streets. Soviet forces were called in. The Communist Party soon turned to conciliation with the protesters. This is known as the Polish Thaw. People who don't know what that is. A few months later, a rebellion broke out in Hungary. A crowd grabbed members of the secret police and hung them from poles, like leaves from trees, as the song goes. You may remember Corvus Mickey singing that.
I do.
Soviet forces then obviously invaded Hungary and killed thousands of rebels.
Yeah.
You probably know that. In October 1956, the Polish leader gave a dramatic speech that was reproduced in full in Beijing, promising socialism with freedom. He revealed that collectives in Poland produced much less than the previously owned private farms. But for readers in China, the remarks about the Soviet Union's debt were the real bombshell. It seemed that the Russians were guilty of imperialist exploitation.
Ooh.
Because they were.
How could this be the case?
And they had done exactly the same to China in the treaty I mentioned earlier. For the first time, newspapers were avidly read, Robert Lowe noted. He was currently serving in a gulag for hosting an English radio broadcast. He's an English speaker. By early 1957, over 10,000 students were up in arms across China. Workers went on strike in unprecedented numbers. The Ministry of Industry counted more than 220 cases in 1956. In Manchuria, 2,000 workers in grain transportation deliberately slowed the pace of their work and petitioned the government for pay increases. When party officials retaliated by threatening to treat them as counter-revolutionaries, the strikers became even more determined. In Shiyi County, irate farmers destroyed collective property, set fire to the grain stores, and even took out knives at collective meetings, threatening party officials who refused to let them go. That's how a slave frees himself. A goddamn knife. Mao responded by saying that China will find its own way to socialism, that Stalin had got some things right, but clearly had got some wrong. Most people took that as Mao's a centrist. Look at this, he's reformed. He's encouraging criticism.
Moderate centrist socialism, yeah.
Yeah, after looking at what Mao would do in response, I'm pretty sure he was saying that, well, Mao got some things wrong because he was a cuck.
Yeah, Stalin, but yeah.
He invited the criticism. The criticism exploded. One example meeting is telling you the mood of the time. The climax of the meeting came when an engineer complained that he had given up a job in the United States that paid $800 a month in order to return to the motherland and serve it. You must remember, for most Chinese living outside of China, when the communists took over, it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it was a blessing, yeah.
China's actually united. There is peace. I can go home. I'm sure these commie things are in charge, but whatever. I'm not political.
How much of an impact on the country can that really have?
Even minor technical suggestions he had made were rejected as bourgeois thoughts. He had transferred 4 times, each time his salary had been readjusted downwards. For 6 years, he said, I had not been able to use my ability or training. Because of what I have endured, I have lost 30 pounds. Why? Why? Why do you expect us to put up with your stupidity, your indifference? Why do you think we will all sit back and quietly let you communists grow fat and insolent? This is against a party chair.
Because no one stopped them yet?
Like 5 days ago, this dude would have been immediately killed.
Yeah.
But this was encouraged at the time. Except that when Mao got reports of that was what was France, and not, well, you could reform in a little ways. I don't know, I like communism. I don't know what he was expecting. He was actually genuinely in a state of shock, the Party Archive show. He did not expect people to be this mad.
Yeah.
Child.
Yeah.
He, in turn, started the anti-rightist campaign, insisting that allowing criticism was all part of the plan.
This is the 100 Flowers thing, right?
Yeah. The thing is, this is played off in modern Western textbooks as like Mao's a political genius. He did all of this because he laid out, I'll get the rightists to criticize me, then I'll kill them all. This is CCP propaganda.
Yeah, no, these are all loyal party men.
No, the archives show that he was genuinely like, oh my God, they're criticizing me.
Yeah, of course he was. He's a lunatic.
We don't recognize, we don't have the imagination in the West to understand how bad totalitarians are.
God, that's...
Anyway, anti-rightism campaign, time to solve all that criticism.
Oh yeah, all those right-wingers that are left in China.
One young woman, 17, was packed off to the Gulag for displaying blind faith in foreign imperialist things. What do you think she did?
Medicine?
She had praised a shoe polish.
Oh.
Turned out the shoe polish was made in the United States.
I thought it was going to be something really useful, like medicine.
Rightist. The shoe polish is really good.
But my shoes are just so shiny.
Literally, she started going, I really like the shoe polish. It actually works on my shoes. You should try it. Time to die. More than 500,000 people were labelled rightist during the anti-rightist campaign. Yeah. Gotta go. Less than a decade after liberation, he was all ready to push his bold experiment. Finally, we haven't achieved real communism yet, but it's time for the experiment to really achieve...
We're almost there, boys.
...communism. After all of that, that's the liberation era. That is the tragedy of liberation. Mao came up with this experiment and called it the Great Leap Forward.
Oh, God, yeah.
Over the next 4 years, tens of million people would be worked, starved, or beaten to death in the greatest man-made catastrophe the country had ever seen. That's the closing line from Frank Dikötter, and it's beautiful because we've done the other book clubs.
Yeah, we know what happens during the Great Leap Forward.
And it only gets worse. To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.